And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Lakers insider for Lakers Daily, joined on this fine Monday evening. There's a Monday Night Football going on right now that, you're probably watching, apologies and thoughts and prayers to those of you who employ Christian McCaffrey on your fantasy teams. Late scratch there on a Monday night for a player that important is just brutal, and I don't care. I hate the Niners. So today on the show, though, we're going to be talking about another late scratch heading into training camp here, as Christian Wood. It was announced officially by the Los Angeles Lakers that he just now on September 9th got surgery on his left knee despite not having played a basketball game since back in February. It's been a long ass time. And somewhere in between there, Christian Wood was cleared somehow to play basketball in the playoffs. Didn't play. But Jared Vanderbilt was cleared to play, did not play in the playoffs, and then now we're coming to find out that Jared Vanderbilt isn't as healthy as we were kind of hoping. So, like I said, joining me to talk about all of this stuff is Raj Chapalu. As it's been a rough 48 hours or so, or however long, for Lakers fans. And a particularly rough, 24 hours or so for you, as you found out that Kendrick Lamar was going to perform Not Like Us in front of the hundreds of millions of people who tune in to the Super Bowl every year. Raj, what was the most difficult bit of news over the last 24 hours for you?
First, I don't think he's gonna perform that. You can't perform that there.
He's gonna call Drake a pedophile in front of tens or hundreds of millions of people. It's gonna happen.
All right,
Let's get ready.
All right. I just want to move on from it, Anthony. I just want to enjoy the music
Drake. Kendrick does not.
I was surprised that he got the nod for that, which is crazy because I feel like Drake actually endorses the NFL more. He's on flights with I think the Patriots owner is Robert Kraft, right? So he's very much in the NFL. He has a music lyric saying like big as the Super Bowl. Like he's very much like he was basically asking for this role and it was not handed to him. So I'm sure Kendrick will kill it. That's in like 6 months. My evil stat of the day, Anthony, is someone I was texting with a friend and they were trying to get me to watch football, right? Like, hey, the Rams are a good team. And I was like, football has 17 games. Mm-hmm. The Lakers have 17 games in November. It's just different. Like football is 6% over after this last Sunday. Like it's totally different. So
yeah, I already missed that 6%. I love football. I've been legitimately debating, because I still own the rights to the Anthony Irwin show. And I've been considering creating a YouTube channel that is, the Anthony Irwin show, that would allow me to talk about football and talk to my football friends and my friends who cover football and, talk about like baseball, talk about Dodgers and stuff like that. Still debating it. I'm really kind of curious. Like this might be like the canary in the coal mine for me. Let's just see what, like just me mentioning it, see what kind of momentum we can get behind it. Also have another project coming that might make that difficult, but still considering it. But it's just, I love football for a few different reasons. One, it's a great sport to watch. It just is. It is a spectacle. The reason that these numbers and these rating numbers just keep ballooning year in, year out as the NBA and every other sport, it's just kind of like scratching and clawing for every bit of relevance that they can get, the crumbs that the NFL leaves behind. The reason the NFL can basically like just take Christmas from the NBA, is because, like you said, every single game is its own spectacle. You get together with friends and family every Sunday to watch your favorite team play. You get together and it's every single big like Monday Night Football game. Doesn't matter who's playing. You're at least going to tune into the first quarter of it or so. And a lot of people watch it that way. And basically, like the NBA is trying to build towards that. They're trying to bring parity into the sport. and they're trying to get casual fans to pay more attention to teams beyond their favorite team. I I don't think, and this is a double negative on purpose, I don't think that the NBA didn't offer the TNT and the opportunity to match.
Hmm.
TNT, like in Turner, are getting ready to sue or did sue or getting ready for litigation there. I
Right.
really think, like, the more I think about it, I think the NBA, because you watch NFL programming and programming about the NFL, and it is just so much better than any, like, in terms of like what a league would want how they would want their sport to be covered. Everything surrounding the NFL is so much better than like NBA. What is it? The NBA Tonight, or whatever that show is. I always forget. Inside the
Right.
NBA.
Hmm.
Like, it's a great TV show, but it's not a good NBA show. Like, it's not a show that benefits the NBA. And I think the NBA basically told Turner, was like, well, you just pay these guys a shit ton of money. They aren't going
Right.
anywhere. We don't necessarily love their coverage. As all of this is going on, you have Shaq calling Rudy Gobert the worst player ever in the history of the sport. Like, I wouldn't blame the NBA if they were like, you know what, we don't we don't need that
Yeah.
anymore. Like, you guys can have your own show, you can do your own thing over there, but we need a corporate partner, an official affiliate of the NBA, to
Sure.
cover us better than you have. So, yeah, it's just I'm happy to have the NFL back, because it's like a nice little reminder that there's stuff beyond baseball for a quick little bit, and then it's like right back to basketball. It's great.
The only thing I don't like, NFL is the only like sport that is pushed on me in my For You page. Like I can ignore the other sports. I feel like football is just thrown to where I have to stay offline. And the one thing, I don't watch football, obviously. Like I've obviously tuned into games. I've watched the Super Bowl, but what I do like about them, and I think like people put up that the only reason that they're bigger than the NBA is because of the volume of games, right? They have 17 games, we have 82. But I don't really agree with that. I think their coverage is so much, like I watch football, and even though I don't understand it, the NFL doesn't care that I don't understand it. They don't like dumb it down so that like I can understand the game. They still are super detailed. The commentators like Tony Romo is super detailed on the play calling and with all the terminology that I still don't understand. But like his job isn't to let you understand. That's your job to kind of come in with the understanding of what he's talking about. And I really like that that's the way they do business, and their halftime shows are the same way, very detailed. And the NBA chose to win like the battle and like lost the war. They win the off season, right? They're the most tweeted about sport. But the NFL wins the war in terms of the actual people watching the games. And I wish the NBA would lose a few more of these small battles to win the war. But no, football's a huge monster that I just stay away from.
It's funny though, because like you said, your For You page gets ruined by football or whatever.
Yes.
Makes it impossible. Like, football has become such an event that it's like you feel like you're missing out. Like, I felt like borderline uncomfortable just now not having the game on in the background. Like, I need to be able to see it. And I've already won my fantasy week this week. Like, it's like
Hmm.
it's all wrapped up. I'm good to go. And yeah, like, I'm still kind of sitting here saying like, man, it'd be nice to just kind of have that on in the background. So I just put it on the background. All of that was a nice distraction, Raj, from the topic du jour.
Hmm.
Has, again, according to the Lakers, they didn't email me personally on this one. They tweeted this out, or either that or I missed it. I don't know. I got to go back and look through it again. But the Lakers announced today that Christian Wood today got arthroscopic surgery on his left knee, the left knee that bothered him last year, enough to miss every game after February. And, again, this is going on at a time when we're finding out that Jared Vanderbilt hasn't progressed in the way that he and the Lakers may have hoped. And his beginning of the season is also now in doubt. That was something that you and I, Raj, talked a little bit about. I didn't want to go
Hmm.
too far to, go into too much detail there, because I don't like reporting on injuries anymore. But then when you have somebody like Mike Bresnahan, who does have as many years covering the Lakers under his belt, and does so now for the for the Lakers TV channel, you kind of have to add whatever information you have to that story. So I did. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I said in kind of talking about the Jared Vanderbilt situation was kind of the way that the Lakers handled this information, the way that, and not only that, and even before you even get to that, how the Lakers handle athlete medicine, right? Like the actual keeping of players healthy, and to the extent that I can speak on that, because again, I'm not an expert on these things, but essentially it's a weird version um of how the Lakers handle players shooting, where
Okay.
they don't have, now the Lakers do have a head of medicine, they do have a head trainer, they do have a medical team. So it's not apples to apples, because the Lakers don't have a shooting coach.
Mhm.
But basically the reasoning that the Lakers use, or the excuse that the Lakers use to not have a shooting coach, is, well, they all have their own shooting coaches. We just want to leave that, offer that freedom up to the players to be able to work with people that they are more comfortable with. Even as it is now a running joke that the Lakers acquire people who can shoot and then they forget how to shoot. Super weird. Definitely definitely a total coincidence there. But with the way that the Lakers kind of handle medicine, they again like to kind of delegate that and allow these players to work with doctors that they are more comfortable with, work with their
Mhm.
teams, and the Lakers then, it's not that they completely ignore player health. That would be um that would be unethical, but they do kind of give way to these players' teams and work with those players' medical teams to try to figure these things out. But for the most part, and especially when it comes to the messaging on these injuries, the Lakers are completely hands off there. So when it seems like, what is going on, how does all of this like what's happening there is that, like, the Lakers, they can't maintain a kind of consistent message on each injury if they basically cede all control of that narrative to the player. And that's how you arrive at places where these stories just haven't been very consistent. They don't make a ton of sense. And that's where the frustration for fans and for people like you and me comes with, like, the actual purveying of the information. But the actual, like, handling of these injuries and the actual
Mhm.
handling of this these medical situations, do you think it might be time to maybe, like, for the Lakers to maybe, like, take a little bit more control of these situations, especially with players who aren't LeBron James?
Yeah.
LeBron's pretty damn good at staying healthy. I'm not too worried about him. But
Sure.
we are now, there's a notable trend here where a lot of these injuries and these recovery times are either inconsistent or they stretch way beyond when we think that player is going to be available.
And so I've heard, I think, Aaron speak about this, but I think this just goes with most teams. I don't follow every team as closely, but I just think there's no advantage, right, Anthony, for giving a timeline. Like, is there any advantage for the team or the player to actually have a timeline? Which is why when a player gets hurt, the timeline is so vague. It's more like it'll be reevaluated in 6 to 8 weeks. That's usually the timeline for these type of things. It's frustrating for sure as a fan. You'd hope your players get healthy. We've had injuries, and I think Gabe Vincent, the latest, right? Gabe Vincent came back and actually played when he obviously should not have been playing. Again, I'm not a doctor, you're not a doctor, but I think just watching the game tape, it's very clear he was nowhere near ready. A guy that you don't like talking about on the show, but Jalen Hood-Schifino is a guy that has talked about, like, hey, I was never healthy either. I should not have been playing, but I was playing. These aren't like accusations toward the organization. It's just like these are the things that players
Kind
are
of feel like
showing
it.
on.
Like, not saying that you are accusing them of anything, but, like, when you have such consistent, either, like, you have somebody like Jalen Hood-Schifino saying, like, I don't think I should have been playing, or you have players out there playing who you and I can also see, like, I don't think that guy should be out there. Like, again, like, what is it like? There's a question here that that Justin Tyndall writes in. It's a super one, so I'm going to play this real quick before I read it. Justin Tyndall, what does this franchise do well? If we think it's a clown show to wait till Braun and AD aren't here, what does Genie spend money on besides players and staff? Like Raj, like what is it that they do? Like what do they do well?
Well, I mean, we always put our hopes in the scouting, right? That was like the place that is supposed to be the highest of regard, and then after that, it's supposed to be recruiting stars, right? That's the two things that they're supposed
Team
to
scout team
be
that elected to draft Jalen Shafina.
Yes. Well, I mean, there's some. Oh, never mind. That's another case. But I mean, like the problem with this stuff, and again, I can keep going down the line. Jared Vanderbilt did not look ready, and again, these are tough. Like Anthony, again, these are places where the sausage is being made, and I'm not even outside the kitchen. I'm literally in another zip code, right? Like I have no idea. I can't be in there. I don't know how hot it is. I don't know when it's ready. You kind of have to distrust that the player, and you have probably a whole bunch of things that have to be in line. You have to have the players' consent. You have to have the doctor's consent. You have to probably have the player's personal doctor consent. These are millionaires, right? These are not to put. I don't like calling players assets, but these are millionaire assets, right? Like you have to protect the asset in a way. And Jared Vanderbilt's on a 4-year deal. If he's not ready to play, then he's not ready to play, and that's frustrating to hear as a fan. But I think it just goes down the line when you have Vanderbilt not ready. Cam Reddish, a player that was frustrating last year, but Cam Reddish, in my opinion, came back and was not the same player that after he kept coming back from injury. Anthony, do you remember this? He would come back, get hurt, come back, get his starting lineup, position back every single time somehow, but he would come back, start. Yeah, but he would start, be hurt again. And we're like, everyone's like, yeah, Cam Reddish can just take 3 weeks off. It's okay. Like it'll be all right. The team will survive. So, it's frustrating. It's just, I just like the Christian Wood stuff. I have no reason to believe that he would there was any
company time.
But that makes no sense. He's a free agent after this season. Like, what good does it do for him recovering on company time if he's not getting minutes? Like, he's a guy that needs to play and needs to show that he can average whatever it is. He averaged 6 points a game last season and shot 30% from 3. That's not getting you a second contract or a next contract. Like, I just don't. I don't understand the company time reasoning that I've seen over the timeline with that. But it's definitely frustrating.
More just a timing thing. So, like, I agree with you. Like, I don't think that he's company timing this because it would simply be too stupid. Like,
right.
I've heard plenty of criticism of Christian Wood, kind of the like from people behind the scenes. Like I've heard, there's plenty of criticism of Christian Wood, kind of the player, his instincts on the court, his approach to the sport, all those things. But being stupid isn't necessarily one of the criticisms that I've gotten too much of with Christian Wood. And if you company time this, where you wait, like you first dealt with this back in February, it knocks you out of the season from that point forward. You are now on an expiring minimum contract. This set, a contract, by the way, that you had to opt into because your market was going to be that bad. And then with all of that going on, hold off on getting surgery so that you could enjoy your off season and not have to recover during your off season, and now can kind of recover at a time when everybody is getting ready to, working towards getting ready for camp anyway. Like, Raj, the levels of stupidity that would be being put on display there are legitimately unrivaled. Like, that would be one of the dumbest things that you could possibly do as your career is literally slipping through your hands like water that you're trying to hold on to right now. Like, that just does not track with somebody who wants to remain in the NBA. As you and I both know, Christian Wood wants to remain in the NBA. So, like, I kind of, even though I understand why people's my head jumped to there. Like, I first said, like, this better not be a company time type. And by the way, like, when I say company time type thing, that is referring to Shaquille O'Neal, who famously put off getting surgery until, right before camp. And when he was asked about it and why he didn't get it earlier in the summer, he said, I got injured on company time and I will recover on company time. Not the kind of thing that Kobe wanted to hear. I
Oh
don't think
no.
Kobe or Lakers fans were too thrilled about that. People seem to forget that when they say Kobe drove Shaq out of town. Like Shaq, like played a part in
He had a
driving
hand on the
himself out of
steering
town
wheel.
too. Yeah, he wasn't exactly like hitting the brakes. He wasn't tapping the brakes. Because after that, he was demanding like a record-breaking contract too, like,
Right.
and
Yeah.
was like publicly negotiating the terms of that contract. But anyway, so I tweeted out, this better not be a company time thing. And ever since then, I still can't think that it's a company time thing, because it would be so dumb. It would, Raj, that would end his career. I'm not kidding. There
And
are already questions about like him as a teammate and in a locker room and all of that stuff. And with everything going on in his career, if he does this, there is no offer after this season. So I
that's
I
what
can't fathom him doing that.
I was gonna say. He's already on thin ice. His reputation's already kind of in the dirt in terms of just NBA wide. Like that's the reason he had to take the offer he did with the Lakers. I just cannot see it. A guy that's on a minimum deal. What I think happened, Anthony, and again, this is me just I guess hoping in a universe where things happen as they should.
Yeah.
And this happened with Gabe Vincent last year as well. If you remember, Gabe Vincent.
Optimism.
Yes. Gabe Vincent returned. He played 2 games, shot 0 for 12 from 3, and then got surgery, right? He's like, I tried to play through this. I could not. And do you remember the reaction to that? Fans were like, wait, he sat out 4 weeks. He played 2 games, and now he gets the surgery. Well, he'll be back. I forgot the date that they gave for him to return, but he came
Yeah.
back way late in the season. I think Christian Wood, similar thing, right? He tweeted out today that he was ramping up and that he'll be back stronger than ever, as most of those tweets say they are. But I believe that's what happened. He tried to
It
ramp
would
up. He
be
tried
funny.
to.
Is like, it'd be funny to
I'm
see a
done.
player. You see a player like, yeah,
This is
enjoy those
it.
highlights. I don't think that's coming back anytime soon. I got to work on my jumper now.
Right,
I got to add a
right, yeah,
floater.
right.
Work on my footwork. Make sure, make sure I can get to the free throw line a little bit more efficiently. I'm not going to have the same burst. Yeah.
Right. I'm coming back as a worse player. Right. So yeah, like I think
We'll
same
see.
thing. Same thing with Christian Wood. He was ramping up. He tried to play through this. I think he had a similar procedure in March, and he's like, okay, I'm having a little bit of pain, but let me see if I can play through it. And obviously not. And now he'll have surgery, and we'll be back, whatever the time frame is. That's what I think happened. I think that's what happened with Gabe Vincent. The Vanderbilt stuff, I have no idea. That one is much more in the dark. But I think with those two, at least for me, that's what happened.
Yeah, I tend to think so too, because I none of the people or players involved here are the kinds of players who I think would try to game the system and earn themselves a little extra PTO. Like,
No.
they just aren't at that point in their career. They don't have that kind of leverage over the organization where you could even consider trying that kind of a thing.
Right.
You mentioned the other player that we talked about, Jared Vanderbilt. Like I think he legitimately thought, like, this happens sometimes, man. Like, as somebody who is 38 years old, looking back on the first half, like, I'm reaching kind of roughly that point where I'm probably reaching the midway point, getting pretty close to the midway point of my life, and I'm looking back at like the first half of my life, and I'm like, yeah, man, I wish I had a little bit more time. This happens sometimes in injury recovery, where you're looking at you like, all right, I'm going to give it a month. I'm going to see how I look, how I feel after a month or so, see if this thing is getting better. And maybe you do actually physically start to feel a little bit better. But the
Mhm.
thing about injury recovery is that it's not that progression isn't linear. That that you take
Sure.
steps back. No progress is linear typically.
Mhm.
And it might just be with Christian, with Jared, with even Gabe before him, Kendrick Nunn. We went through this too, where they're holding off. And by the way, like, some people just want to avoid surgery at all costs, and like, I understand that
Mhm.
concept. The girl who cuts my hair is considering has been told she needs a hip replacement, and she's like scared to death of going under the knife and stuff. And there are anxieties that come with that too. So like, I understand that there's a lot going on, and you maybe try to avoid surgery, and you get 3-4 months, into your recovery. And then after that recovery hasn't gone in the way that you were maybe hoping, now you have to more seriously consider surgery. I kind of get it. Like, I understand how this could happen to the player. Where
Sure.
I don't have as much goodwill built up is with the Lakers. Because if you thought, like we have talked about the intel disadvantage that the Lakers operate at because of the way that they do business and because of how small an organization they are. You shouldn't be at an intel disadvantage with your own players. Like, you should be able to stay on top of this. So either, Raj, they didn't know the extent of these injuries and don't have, proper intel on their own employees, or they did and still opted to not do anything to the roster to widen those margins just in case something like this happened over the offseason. Neither of those circumstances or processes leave me feeling particularly great. Which would you prefer there?
Yeah, those are two dark roads to go off. I'll go with the path that I believe is true. And again, this is not me. Again, I always say this. I can't have bail for Rob Pelinka because I just don't make that much. But I think it's more the communication gap. Like, players in the offseason, especially, you hear this around, they're usually gone. Like, they're just not in LA. They're not in town. And especially with injury recovery, it's tough. It's tough to know exactly what the timetables are going on. I truly believe the team thought that they would have Jared Vanderbilt ready, and Christian Wood was ramping up, right? That's the term that he used. That's the term that is kind of the wording coming out from the story. So I have no reason to believe that they thought they would have Christian Wood as well healthy. That's right. That's what I think happened. I think the darker road, though, Anthony, is knowing both of these injuries and then still just moving forward as Jackson Hayes. Go ahead.
It's already a position of need, and you lose the guy, the better player.
Right. Better player. Yes, we can get into the Christian Wood conversation in a little bit, but that's at least what I think. That's what I think happened. I think that there was some confusion on timelines, and like, injuries are going to come up as well, and you're not going to have all 15 of your guys healthy anyway. But yeah, that's a darker road for sure. If they knew these injuries were present and they decided not to do anything, I think it's such a murky window, like, of what's going on, especially with Vando, again, who I saw walking around at the Sparks Arena. Looked fine there. So, hopefully that portrays to good news later. But at least that's what I think is what happened. I don't know if that's being too glass half full. I still think the glass is just empty no matter what situation this is. So it doesn't really matter. Not having both of those guys would suck anyway. So, but that's what I think happened.
Yeah, even that explanation, even though it makes some sense, doesn't look great for the people involved, right?
It doesn't.
You have a communication breakdown between you and a player on timelines and stuff. And, like, by the way, that's why you have timelines. Like, like that way, if somebody is missing their timeline one way or the other, like, either they look, ideally you set a timeline and then miraculously they're
ahead of it. Yeah,
they return way ahead of schedule. That'd be great if that happened all the time. But not like the reason that you have timelines, is for transparency, not just with fans, which matters. And, I talked about this on the show yesterday, but with sports being in bed now with gambling, and to the extent that they are, you have timelines so that bettors can kind of take that into account, and line makers can take that into account. They are now your corporate partners. But then you also have that in those internal expectations, because, like, if you don't have if you have this communication breakdown between the player and the organization, well, now you got to look sideways at your medical team and be like, how didn't we know this? What's going on here? And for somebody like Pelinka, because, like, I've talked about this in the past, but basically the way that decisions are made within the Lakers are, um, you have these various teams that compile data and they compile information, and Rob basically fields all of that information, locks himself in an office. Used to be with Darvin Ham. Sometimes it's with like Kurt Rambis, helps and stuff like that. And then as they're nearing decisions, then he goes up to, especially if it's major decisions, he goes
Mm-hmm.
up to the echelon of the organization where Jeannie and Linda and Kurt and Tim reside, and they kind of talk amongst themselves, and they come to some kind of, they really care about consensus. They would like to all be on the same page whenever they make a decision, which often can lead to paralysis by analysis. The Warriors, I've heard kind of deal with the same kind of issues now with the way that their organization is kind of built up. But if you're Rob, and you're heading into this offseason, one of the major teams that you're going to want information from is your medical staff, so that you can make these decisions. And if you talk to your medical staff and they say, yeah, Jared's, either he's coming along a little slowly, maybe you do go out and trade for an extra wing, with the thought being that you might not have Vando at the beginning of the season. Or like, by the way, he's been dealing with this recovery now for so long. I'm not willing to bet my house. I'm not going to bet a pink slip on Vando playing next year.
Sure.
I need to see him out there before I'm willing to consider him a part of this roster and a part of this rotation. And so like if you're Rob and you're approaching this upcoming, or this would be a few months ago, and you're getting ready for this offseason, you talk to your medical team and you figure out what conversations they have had with these guys on the roster whom these decisions are being made based off of, and you move forward that way. And if that communication isn't where it needs to be, then like it breaks down every other level of any decision that you're making, because all of whatever decision that you finally make, or any move that you do or do not make, is based on faulty information, right? I was watching Narcos today, and spoiler alert, but there's a character, there's a cop who Pablo Escobar wanted dead, specifically Carrillo, and basically it was faulty information that Pablo let out on purpose to try to get this guy cornered and be able to ambush him. And they were successful because the police made a decision and acted on bad information, and the winds up getting this guy killed. And obviously significantly different stakes here. But if you are making these decisions going into the offseason, and you're like, yeah, we feel comfortable staying pat because Jared's team is telling our medical staff that he's going to be good to go, or Christian's team is telling our medical staff that they're going to be good to go, and our medical staff is just taking their word for it, then and then all of a sudden you find out that they aren't actually going to be good to go. Now you're sitting here on September 9th with an entire offseason behind you, without having done anything to your roster to improve. By the way, again, Raj, needs to be said, spots that needed to be worked on anyway.
Let me ask you this. If you, just by what you know from this front office and just how they've responded this summer, if Jared Vanderbilt, and let's throw in Christian Wood, were ruled out for this season before free agency started, do you think a trade would have commenced, that they would have made a trade? They would have made a move?
I think so. Yeah.
Really?
I mean, they I mean, if you don't have Christian, if he's heading towards surgery anyway, and the only centers beyond AD that you have on your roster, and again, the Lakers thought, there's a reason, by the way, that like the leaks were coming out that LeBron would take a pay cut for Jonas Valanciunas. I don't think LeBron is like the world's biggest Jonas Valanciunas fan. I think
No,
he and Clutch specifically knew that that was a position of weakness and was like, yeah, it'd be nice to have that type of a center to help out our dude. By the way, also a member of Clutch and Anthony Davis. Like, I don't think that was a coincidence. And it's not to say that like Clutch or LeBron knew about Christian Wood's issue that might have
sure.
been coming here later in the offseason. I mean more that was already a position of need, and then now it's a position of desperate need because
Hmm.
now that you're hoping that Jackson Hayes takes a step forward in his career at a point where he's probably who he's going to be. You're really hoping that Colin Castleton goes from somebody who like couldn't get on the floor with the main team last year to somebody who plays rotation minutes while Christian Wood is potentially out. By the way, like it wouldn't have surprised me if the plan going into this year was to play AD with a center a little bit more. Wood is the one that makes the most sense there because he can
Hmm.
theoretically space the floor. Hayes can't. And now you lose that kind of option as well. So like it and this is what happens, by the way, with thin rosters, right? These type of situations, it snowballs a lot faster because the bottom third of this roster is made up of guys that I go to bed every night praying I don't see those guys play this year.
Sure. I don't believe a move was ever coming, even if even if those are, and maybe off like an injury exception, they were able to add a player, off of free agency or whatever. I don't think the front office was ever attaching draft capital to go get players and to move off of these minimum contracts. It feels like there was some type of draft capital or asset needed. Again, I just think they were more than okay with going into this season with this roster, see what it looks like, just move. And again, like I think Jared Vanderbilt is very vital to the success of this team next year. But I think it could be very easily for them to look down the roster and like, hey, look, if Vanderbilt's not ready, we got Rui Hachimura, we got Max Christie, we got Dalton Connect, who we hope is a rotational player next season, right? And then we have a ton of guards that we have to fit rotation pieces into, which to me like kind of takes out the theory of how much they were going to play two bigs. You have Gabe Vincent, D'Lo, and Austin already in that backcourt. That doesn't even include Max Christie. If you add another forward, acquiescing as a center in that, it kind of mucks up the rotation. So I just never believed, Anthony, that deal was coming. And maybe that's just me being this dark road. And I've been very focused on just what the roster is today and what the young guys coming in are, more Dalton Connect than Bronny James for obvious for reasons. But yeah, I just never thought a deal was actually coming. So I just, again, and I'm lower on Christian Wood than I think even most Laker fans are. I'm not like obviously I want him to get healthy. I just think his utility isn't as vital as a Vando is, and I think Jackson Hayes can step up in that role a little bit more in the regular season than obviously in playoff games. But it's tough to lose two forwards who can theoretically help you on the boards and on the glass, and to me those are the most important needs on this team. And you have two guys that might not be ready when the season starts, so it's tough. It's tough news.
How do you make up for these potential losses? Right? Like Vando is one of three guys that plays defense on the perimeter. Wood is one of two guys who can protect the rim and spread the floor on this roster, at least theoretically on both of those fronts. Like these are two, like even with you being lower on Christian Wood and me being lower on Jared Vanderbilt than most, like these guys are still key rotation players on a rotation,
Sure.
like a roster that does not extend very far beyond the rotation.
Yeah.
Raj, it needs to be pointed out, Bronny James, Maxwell Lewis, Cam Reddish, you're hoping Dalton Connect is ready to go next year. Like Jalen Hood Schifino, like that's the bottom third of your roster, and the only guy from those four who I like actually look forward to watching play next year is Dalton Connect, who plays shooting guard and doesn't play defense.
Right.
It's just like I'm really like these kinds of things. And again, like this is what was so maddening because like yeah, I also, because of what I knew going into the offseason, and then especially once I was getting word that the Lakers weren't going to they were going to use their pick and keep the player that they used the pick on. once I started getting that message, I started telling people like, oh, this might be a really quiet off season. This might. Now I didn't think it would be like quiet as a mouse on freaking Christmas Eve, but I I didn't think that it was going to be super active. But now, given a team that already had razor thin margins, is those margins are cut even further. Like, we're talking about the gif of Mickey like cutting the bread that you can see through margins here at this point.
Right. Let's start with Christian Wood, because I think Christian obviously is a very talented player, and I think just from a talent perspective, we lose a lot by losing him. Right. I think he's a guy that really can eat up offensive possessions. But to me, Anthony, like, again, I don't mean to attack Christian Wood, but like, I think we talked about this with Lonnie I can't remember when it was, a few days ago. I think it's similar. Obviously, they're not similar player archetypes, but I look at them in similar ways in terms of where the league is going. Christian Wood is a slow, methodic, plotting center that can score, right? And he can rebound a little bit too, but that's his archetype. And I think if you're not
He's not very
special,
physical either. Like, if you're going to be
right?
slow, you need to be physical, and he's not.
Exactly. And like, to me, he's not a really good screen setter either. And like, his defense comes when he has an offensive role, right? When he's like very involved, or he's a centric point on the offense, then he's like really locked in defensively. But for the most part, he wants to score. He wants to bring the ball up. His 3-pointer, I never believe it's going in, even when he shot 30%,
Yeah.
37% 2 years ago. Last year was at 30, and that kind of more matches what the shot form looks like to me. But again, like, slow centers like that don't defend, that's a really tough archetype to play on a perfectly built team, on a team like the Lakers, where that's not. And yes, he can play next to AD and LeBron, but like, I think most players in the world can play next to those two. Like, I think that's not where the role should be for a center, right? The whole point of having a good center is so that they can back up AD. AD is going to play 20 to 25 minutes at least at the center position. I think Wood can play the 4 offensively. I still have questions about his defensive fit there. I'm not as high on him. I didn't enjoy the Wood experience. Sounds weird, but like, I did not enjoy the Christian Wood experience last year, just as a basketball player. And then you bring up all the other stuff in terms of wanting the ball. I think he's a guy like that. His best role to me is when he can carry an offensive unit, and we just have too many guards where we just don't need that as much from him. I think he's less valuable on our team. Obviously, I hope he's healthy. We need as many bodies as we can. He's a good rebounder when he tries. His best game last season, Anthony, do you remember when he like guarded Kevin Durant well? You remember that? It was like, he played the Suns very well. He guarded Kevin Durant and contested him.
Remember, we were on the air. We were like, they're putting him on KD on purpose.
It worked.
And it's working.
It worked. And like,
yeah.
I mean, it worked because Anthony Davis is behind him, right? Like, that's the whole reason it works. But I mean, you give Christian Wood credit. He moved his feet, contested high.
Sometimes and KD's on the other side of an Achilles tear. It probably helps a little too.
Right. It wasn't 100% KD. But yeah, Christian Wood, obviously, he and Ham had a special connection. He was big on the recruiting process. AD, I believe, was big in the recruiting process. Hopefully he gets healthy. I think Jackson Hayes being a high motor guy, like, I think that's more important on a LeBron team where he's 40. I don't know, maybe I'm just looking too much in that direction, but yeah, I don't think this is as huge of a loss as I think it's being made, but I do understand from a talent perspective, Christian Wood, losing Christian Wood definitely dips you below a line that the Lakers are already very close to.
Yeah, Raj got to be careful with the phrasing there. Showtime Lakers baby points out, I didn't enjoy the Wood experience. That's a great
after
note.
It came out, I realized like what I had just said.
This is what a live audience is for, Raj. That's
right.
That's why we do what we do. But no, like, I think one of the points that I think we kept running into with the Darvin Ham experience is that, like, he kept on playing lineups that were like below the baseline threshold for certain skills, right? I think Pete was the person who I first heard make that point. And like, I think this roster is getting dangerously close in terms of players who may be available. Now, look, like, maybe Vando improves during training camp and is ready to go for the beginning of the regular season. The fact that we're still wondering that has far removed from the February, the beginning of when did he get hurt? Was that in
Preseason of last year.
No. But like, when did he
Oh,
stop
right.
playing?
Yeah,
It
you're right.
was
I think
against
right after
Boston around like Christmas, right?
I I think he
Um,
played in the in-season tournament, and then after that, that was pretty much it. He played a few more games after
yeah,
that, and then
I
was
think
done.
Vando got hurt in like December, and
Mhm,
then
mhm.
wasn't able to return again after his injury, because he played in that game where the Lakers beat Boston without AD
Right.
and LeBron, and he got hurt in that game, like
Mhm,
that,
mhm,
and wasn't able to return after that. I think that was in December.
mhm.
So like, in both of these cases, you have lengthy absences on ambiguous timelines. Was it February 1st, huh? Man, so he got hurt and they still didn't do anything at the deadline. Fantastic. Um but the I guess like my point here is that, like, with those two guys, potential in them potentially not being available, you are like getting right up against the threshold of not having enough NBA talent on your roster, you know, because as it is, we're already hoping basically that Max Christie is ready in ways that we can't say definitively that he is. That
Right.
I've seen a lot of highlights on my timeline today about how, Max was completely hampered by Darvin Ham. He actually played a lot more last year than I thought,
Mhm.
um and again, like, I think role matters there and inconsistency matters there, and those are all factors that were at play with a guy in his second year or whatever. But still, like, you're hoping that this guy is just ready to go and be an actual NBA rotation player. And if he isn't, and if Dalton Connect isn't quite ready for the NBA right off of the bat too, which, like, having watched him play defense in the summer, I don't know that he's going to be. Like, you are getting dangerously close to not having enough NBA talent on this roster.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and being at too much of a talent disadvantage night in, night out.
A lot
And
of things need
you know
to
how fucking insane that is to say of a team that has LeBron James and Anthony Davis on it?
I mean,
That's insane.
a lot of things need to hit. You mentioned Dalton Connect, and I've seen this around, Anthony. You're not the only one. You're not sure if Dalton Connect can defend. He can't defend. Like, if Dalton Connect can hit threes at a respectable rate, he's playing on this Like, he's a playable rotation
They
guy.
have
That's the
to.
bar of minutes. He has to. Yeah, like, if he can hit open threes, I think he's better I think he can really shoot off a curl as well, but that's still, like, again, I think that's forward kind of his development in the league, right? Of NBA level defense, NBA level speed, all that kind of adjustment that you have to make. But just straight up open threes that he's going to get off of LeBron and AD's penetration. I think if he just does that, he can play. And Max Christie has to be good. Like, these are like things that have to be true for the Lakers to be good next year. And I thought Vanderbilt also was part of this. If Vando's not healthy, I think we're gonna have a really tough time in the regular season. I think those three things had to hit. I think there was other parts of this team like Gabe Vincent and all that. I think some of that can be redundant with the guards we have. But no, I think your point is correct. We have a bottom third of a roster that's very much pushed in the developmental curve of Maxwell Lewis, Jalen Hood-Schifino, and Bronny James, right? You can throw all those three in there. Those are all guys that are in no way, shape, or form going to be ready this season to play, which puts a lot of pressure on the guys right ahead of them. So, but no, you're right. Max Christie needs to be good next year, Anthony. He can't be good in 2025 to 26. Like, that dude needs to be able to play next year, and probably like important minutes. You go down our roster. I encourage anyone to do this. Who are like perimeter defenders? How far do you go before you get to Max Christie? Like, you don't go far before you get to
Oh
Max
no.
Christie.
No, God no.
Like, and that's a guy that is like probably going to come off the bench just with
No,
time. And
we're at a point now where we're like, Cam Reddish needs to replicate how he looked at the beginning of the regular season last year. Like, I'm not kidding.
right,
Like, I wish I was Rosh. I wish I was kidding. Like,
right.
I wish I like look. I was like, I before the season, and this happens every year.
With Cam Reddish.
No. With me and with my relationship
Okay.
with Lakers fans, this happens
Oh,
every
got you.
year, where I'm like, a lot lower on the Lakers than Lakers fans are. And then like Lakers fans walk away from the season frustrated that like the Lakers didn't meet their expectations, which probably should have been lower at the beginning of the year. And I basically put it like this, right? In order for the Lakers to have the season that Lakers fans like are hoping for or think that the Lakers are capable of, they needed LeBron and like first and foremost, like it's all over if LeBron and AD aren't as healthy as they were last year. Then it's just
Sure.
that's just over. They're
Yeah.
then you're just done, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you could say that about basic almost any other team that has stars of that caliber, right?
Sure.
But still, like that's first and foremost, that's the number one thing that needs to go right for you. Then number two is that the guys who missed last year need to be healthier than they were. And the Lakers would need better injury luck when it came to like, because last year, remember, it was like, for some reason, the guys with the same skill set kept getting hurt, right? Where it was like your POA defenders, right? Where, like that's the best example because literally the only two POA defenders that they had, were Vando and Gabe, and they both missed significant time basically
Right.
all year. But then it was like all the wings got hurt at one point, and then like all the guards. So anyway, so that was number two, that you needed somehow better injury luck than you had last year. That's looking a little shaky already.
Sure.
And then now, like the next box down that needs to get checked is like Austin Reeves needs to take a major step forward this year, and Max Christie needs to take a major step forward this year. So that's still possible, and there's a lot of buzz coming out of the of the facility right now about Austin Reeves. So like, for those of you who like want a quote to go viral from this, from the show that maybe makes the gives you better feels than the rest of the show has, like the Lakers are really happy with what they've seen from Austin so far, and JJ Redick specifically is basically penciling Austin in for like an insane role. Now Austin needs to be good enough to fill that role, and we'll see how that goes. But like in terms of what the Lakers are need to go right for them to have a better season that they had than last year, they're already one box down, right before before the season even starts. They are not getting the better injury luck than they were hoping for, even while they had incredible injury luck with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So like that, those margins are getting really, really, really thin, and they were already pretty damn thin.
Yeah, you also need D'Lo to have a similar season than he did a year ago, right? Last year, I thought he had a really good regular season, broke the Lakers record in 3-pointers made for a season. Had a bunch of games where he kind of carried the offense as well. Yeah, you need a lot of stuff to go right. And you talked about the players that need to improve. You also need, the other players to not get worse. You need players to not have a worse season than they did a year ago, which is tough to ask. LeBron and AD both played over, I believe, 73, 74 games. Anthony, in my opinion, that's not a realistic goal. Like I think like if you can aim for 65 out of both of those, I think that's more of a realistic goal, especially after the Olympics. That puts you in a really tough spot. But like again, the Vando stuff is so murky. I think there's a world where maybe he can still play, when the season starts. Christian Wood obviously won't be available. I'm not as high as in his role, but Vanderbilt's super key, like super unique. It's just you go down this roster. I keep saying it's just how many players can you rely on defensively? I guess a better way to put it. Like I don't think that's a large list. You get to AD, you get to Vando, and then it's LeBron on a night-to-night basis is unfair ask as we say it. After that, you get really quickly into Max Christie, you get into Cam Reddish, you get to other players that have other faults around. It's just Gabe, yeah, and then obviously I see in the comments a D'Lo Austin backcourt. As much as I'm super high on Austin, I think he had a better season last year than he's getting credit for, but a D'Lo Austin backcourt just puts you behind the 8 ball defensively to a point where you have to make it up in other areas. Where the small forward spot is super important in that. LeBron's role and obviously AD carrying the world is just not having Vando really, like he's the X factor to me that puts all these other, you talked about Darvin Ham's lineups, like he's the kind of lineup connector in a way that like if he's out, it just puts you in a really, really tough spot. So I'm here hoping and praying that he's still able to go to start the season. But if he's not, Ooh, it's gonna be a tough defensive ass night tonight.
Yeah, I would probably say so. All right, we do have another starred comment here to get us out of here. Amon Brar writes, "What's up, Anthony? Lakers Nation mentioned Myles Turner as a free agent this upcoming season or after this upcoming season. Indy can't extend him, and historically, they never go deep into the tax. They never go into the tax. Any possibility he is or becomes a trade target? Indiana's in that kind of tough spot where, obviously they had a really good year last year, made the conference finals, right? Yeah, I have that right. Made the conference finals, was kind of a surprising conference finals run. There were a bunch of injuries throughout the conference. So, like, are you considering that a fool's gold thing? Well, as Amon, points out, like, they are paying for this roster in ways that run wasn't fool's gold. They extended Siakam, I believe, this
Oh yeah,
last summer.
max extension.
And then they also extended their other guard, whose name I'm forgetting.
Blanking on his name as well.
Yeah. Obviously Halliburton, I think, is on a max already too. And I thought they extended Turner though, right?
They did. So Andrew Nebhard is the guy we're thinking of.
Nemhard, yeah, he also got extended. I'm pretty sure Turner is extended. I think they're locked into this roster for the foreseeable future. So I don't know if maybe we misheard what Lakers Nation said. I didn't watch or listen to that show, so I don't know what was specifically said there. But I don't think, I think that the days of hoping for Myles Turner are probably gone at this point, because the Pacers have kind of found their identity, and they're going to see if they can maximize that identity. I think they'll try to build on it before they start stripping pieces. Now, all that said, it is a very expensive team, and if their season starts going sideways, maybe then they very quickly revisit it because of how expensive this roster and that core might be moving forward.
Turner signed a 2 years, $60 million extension in 2023. But I believe, he's still tradable, I believe. So that's a guy that they wanted to cut costs. Anthony, I want to ask you this because I've asked this around, and I was
McConnell
actually
also extended too.
Yes, TJ McConnell did as well. I think if you put hindsight glasses on, I think I would have done that Indiana deal. The 2 firsts would have been my guy JHS now and 1 other first. Buddy Hield obviously is not a huge value contract, but I think he would have helped in ways that maybe mitigate what his contract was. Myles Turner to me has turned into an absolute monster, and maybe that was because of the contract, whatever it was. But he would be the best big man we've had next to AD by a wide margin. I think he's that perfect fit that you would ask for. You go back and think about, would you do that deal now, Russ and the 2 firsts for the Turner and Hield that Indiana was asking for?
I was telling them to do it then.
Okay.
Like I was telling them to, and maybe that's what it is, Amon, that so if he extended in 2023 and it was a 2-year extension, then it would end at the end of this season. So all right, that makes more sense then. And like we said earlier, if that team kind of doesn't replicate last year's incredible run, then I would imagine Turner would be one of the first guys that they would look to move, because he's expiring anyway. So you see where that goes. I would think 2 firsts gets you Turner by himself on that expiring contract. So then you got to get to the number that he's at, and that's kind of tricky after a guy extends. But no, when it was a conversation way back when, for as long as it was, Hield and Turner for whatever combination of contracts and the 2 picks and stuff like that. And like you mentioned, obviously that the pick wound up turning into Jalen Hood-Schifino, which obviously only helps those who were operating in hindsight here. But I always thought it was going to be kind of a middling pick, probably, which was it was the 17th pick. And you're getting somebody who, because I think one thing that we've learned, especially after watching the Olympic run, is AD just seems to light up when he gets to play the four. Like he
Oh, he
just
loves it. Absolutely loves it.
there's a different pep in his step when
Mhm.
and I don't think it's necessarily about playing the four specifically. I just think like he takes defense really, really, really seriously. And if he has somebody back there who can make up for mistakes that isn't like when he isn't the only mistake eraser out there, I think he just really lights up that way because he
Yeah.
takes defense so personally. And and so like watching him in the Olympics when he was playing next to Bam, one, I felt bad for every other country in the world. Like that's when
Right.
I was like, American exceptionalism has gone too far. This is just mean. Like this just AD and Bam out there just feels really
Unfair.
rude to everybody else. But like I was at the time, the reason I was all in on Turner, or the reason I really wanted the Lakers to trade for Turner, was because you could at least theoretically play him next to AD. Turner is a good 3-point shooter by center standards, and has been for a while. Has a good form on a shot. It's nice, quick. Like most centers you see shoot, it's like that kind of catapult thing where you actually see them like load the boulder and then like
Right.
let it rip. Turner shoots like a quick,
Mhm.
almost shooting guard type of 3-pointer,
Yeah.
which is pretty unique for a center. And I thought like you could play him next to AD and he could function as his own big in LeBron lineups. Like I was all in there. And then on top of that, Buddy Hield would have been the best shooter that the Lakers would have ever employed. And then, back then I was willing to do anything to get Russell Westbrook out of my life. like it was just like, it's like, all right, so here's the deal. It would be Russell Westbrook for done. All right, we are good. We're good. Yeah, we're set. We're like it was just so it was all of those things. So like I don't even need hindsight to have said it. I was because I was also the kind of person who, and I still feel this way. Like this is why I got so frustrated about this last offseason. I don't think LeBron and AD need nearly the amount of help that the Lakers front office seems to think that they need. And even back then when they had Russell Westbrook and yeah, it took like otherworldly efforts from LeBron and AD to win and overcome having Russ at $47 million on your books, um to get whatever wins that they were able to come by back then. Like I just kept saying, and I think there's a ton of tweets. You could probably just search at Anthony Irwin LA. They aren't as far off as the front office wants you to think. I bet I sent that tweet verbatim, and wound up being correct, right? Like they traded Russ. They didn't add like insane amounts of NBA talent, especially now
Mhm.
looking back. Malik Beasley's almost out of the league. Jared Vanderbilt might be on his way out too if like this whole situation doesn't play out and he never learns how to play offense. And then D'Angelo Russell winds up being kind of like the most mediocre starting point guard in the league. Like it's not like they got an insane haul back for Russell Westbrook and still went to the Western Conference Finals. Like the LeBron and AD, like this roster just has to make a little bit of sense. The back third of the roster just don't like they can't be five guys or four guys I never want to see. Like you need to have more guys who can operate on defense beyond Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt, and Max Christie,
Yeah.
who aren't Anthony Davis. Like
Yeah.
I don't think we're asking for anything insane. I don't think I'm not demanding that Rob Pelinka figure out cold fusion. Like just do your job, man. Stop giving me excuses and do your damn job.
Yeah, I was with you. I wanted Myles Turner, and at that time, I think we also had Frank Vogel still, so it was very much in this like too big monstrous unit that really fits what Frank would have played. But no, I think Myles Turner also has gotten better as well as just a player
Yeah.
to earn. He was on a $40 million deal, I believe, when the trade speculations going down. Now he's got a 2-year 60. Cap's gone up a little bit to kind of impact that, but. No, just a help. I think AD. It's not about loving playing the four or not having help responsibility. I mean, or like having the full responsibility of a five. I think he's the best help defender in the world. And so
Yeah.
like his talents just ooze out of him when he's in that position. And obviously he gets joy out of it as well. He's the best, mistake eraser in the world on defense too. So yeah, it was cool to see him enjoy that. I just never thought that was a realistic position the Lakers could really put him in with the perimeter defenders that the Olympics had. But yeah, Myles Turner would be such a godsend in terms of going from Jackson Hayes to from Christian Wood to all the other centers that we've kind of recycled around. Myles Turner would be a monstrous ad, but yeah, I don't think Indiana's doing anything until the deadline. Well, neither are we, so maybe we're like in the same position. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're keeping that team until they prove that that run was a fluke. But yeah, I just Myles Turner was a cool dream for a little while.
Yeah, I'm also kind of biased too because Myles Turner went to the University of Texas. I am
Mm-hmm.
I've always kind of had a soft spot for UT. Even before I moved out here, I always liked UT because they beat SC in that championship and whenever it was. I think it was 08. I forget, but I watched Turner at UT and I was like, this guy's going to be a stud. This guy is going to
Mm-hmm.
be so damn good. Then he got into the league and he was like, this guy is that damn good. And then the
Mm-hmm.
Lakers had the guy who was like the perfect front court counterpart too. And like also it would have been a really cool return to bigger, stronger, faster because that
Mm-hmm.
like front court of Turner, AD, and LeBron is just like so big and so long and so physical.
You can't
Like
get to the rim. Like, what are you doing?
there's
Like, where are you
yeah,
shooting
like the
from?
key is just a no fly zone. And
Right.
yeah, that's and look, maybe it gets revisited with Turner. I kind of believe in Indiana. Like I think they have something going there. The fact that they
Mm-hmm.
were able to acquire Pascal Siakam and then in the same year get to the Western Conference Finals, like usually you build on that. And you
Right.
you iron out some kinks, or you iron out some wrinkles and you figure that out in the following year. Um, or you do what the Lakers do and you take a step back last year. So I don't know. We'll see. Raj, we have been talking now for an hour. I'm going to go ahead and get us out of here. Anything that like, is there any source of Raj optimism that you're like clinging on to right now? Because this has been probably about as frustrating an off season as it could have possibly been, right?
Yeah, I guess again, I think the optimism, or however you said that, like I think comes in if you just look at what happened last year, and I think you just have to assume, like not assume, but you have to go forward thinking that LeBron and AD play a threshold of games that keeps you competitive, because anything else just is a universe that makes no sense to even analyze. But if you go in that world, a 47-win team, JJ Redick, hopefully, with his relationship and X's and O's kind of brain power, is able to put the team in better positions. You have a roster that's going into year 2 of its continuity, and we always talk about how growth and stuff
With
like
a
that
new
is not.
coach.
Yeah, with the yeah, with a new coach, but at least the roster knows each other. They have familiarity with each other, and sometimes that growth also isn't linear. So you can kind of look at it that way. And I've Anthony, like you mentioned that as a dark off season. I didn't operate that way because I always thought this was the result. I never assumed a trade was coming. I never believed in the attaching of a bunch of first round picks to go get X player, to go get Jeremy Grant, to go get Kyle Kuzma, to go get whoever else was in the rumor mill for us. Those players just never matched to me what the front office was doing. Like, we finally traded Russell Westbrook and we gave up a protected first round pick. Like, that was the highest that we'd go, and that's the offer that we got. And I liked the offer at the time, but you just mentioned now like how one of those players might not be in the league, and the other two are D'Lo and Jared Vanderbilt, which don't really change your life. They change your team, but so that's where the optimism is. And like, I'm high on Dalton Connect. Like, I think he's a real player that can play next year. And he's like 22, 23, so he's a kind of already made product. But that's where the optimism is. Are we in contender status? I don't think so, but also I think the contenders got worse this summer, other than OKC, that just has a insane general manager, I guess, that just keeps pulling off magic tricks out of their hat. But I guess we're operating in a different league. We're not in the same universe as that JM. Yeah, that's where the optimism lives at right now. We're a 47 to 52 win team, and that's probably a 6-7 seed currently. And we'll see what happens at the deadline.
I'm pretty sure the Lakers could have hired Sam Presti after Magic stepped down.
Like a blank check type of thing. Like here's whatever. I
I'm
think, but
pretty sure
doesn't
he
I,
was interested too. Like a
did
lot
he
of
give up?
executives were, because remember at that time you had LeBron. The Lakers were getting ready to trade for Anthony Davis. Like you knew where things were heading. I know that like RC Buford, there was some interest there. I've heard that that like Jeannie and Bob Myers went out for lunch at one point. Um, so there was a lot of interest around the league in Magic's old job. Sam Presti, I believe, was one of those interested parties.
He
Imagine.
give up the power though that he has in OKC. I think that like he has such a powerful ship in OKC. I think getting
I
him
mean,
out of
now I
there.
mean, like I don't think he's ever going anywhere now. Like he's they might be the championship favorite next year, right? It's them in Boston,
Yeah.
and he has like 37 first round picks in the next 10 years. Like a bunch of manageable, like his core is on a bunch of manageable contracts. Like
It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Like our bot, so it's not funny, but like I was looking at OKC's roster, right, and their bottom five roster are all playable players. They just don't, they just can't play because they have
yeah.
too many. And our roster is like, oh man, I can't wait to watch four of these guys in the G League, which I'm excited about. But I understand, like from a fan perspective, people are like, man, all these dudes are gonna play in the G League, and OKC's like, yeah, we just have
At what
actually.
point does like the official Lakers Twitter account just start saying how great their G League team is? Stop
I'm a
tweeting
proponent
about the
of
parent
this.
team.
I'm a proponent of this. Get some advertisement for the G League. There's
Like right now, the tweet that they're getting roasted for is like Lakers basketball is coming soon. Like,
right.
like at what point do they like go back, edit space before Lakers and say South Bay? Like South Bay Lakers basketball is coming soon.
I mean, it is coming soon. It's starting up in November.
Oh man. Well, there went the optimism. All right. That is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. Harrison is back from his vacation, so he and I will be in the lounge tomorrow. I am also kicking off our contenders series a little bit later this week, working on another guest who has a really interesting idea for the Lakers rotation that I want to talk to. So hopefully going to, nail that down here in the next, couple days or so. And until you guys, see all of that come to fruition, I'm Anthony Irwin. That is Raj Palu. This has been the Lakers Lounge. Have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you tomorrow.